At the end of the Tog der Toten cinematic cutscene, we watch Sam and Eddie. We see them walk through a tunnel towards the light, leaving their past life behind and making their way to the perfect world. Now that we can add Die Maschine to the storybook of Call of Duty Zombies, we have seen Samantha Maxis makes her triumphant return in both the opening cinematic and an intel hidden throughout the map. But Sam and Eddie left together, so the question begs to be asked, where is Richtofen? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Spesh. If you're new here, we are doing COD Zombies content all year round. We're going to be following the lore, the gameplay, new strategies, new Easter eggs, whenever we can find them. So if you're into that sort of thing, please consider subscribing to the channel and shooting this video a like. It helps me out a ton. And without further ado, let's get into it. We do know that at the end of Tog der Toten that Sam and Eddie left together through that tunnel, and they walked through the tunnel listening to what all the members of the other crew wanted to do. But what we don't know is, where did Eddie go? We can see clearly where Samantha went. She joined Requiem. She went back and she is now fighting with Requiem, fighting with Weaver, and trying to stop the Omega group from accessing the anomalies all across the globe. But where does that leave Richtofen? I have a couple theories as to where Richtofen may be, so let's get into the first one. Before Cold War came out, Mr. Rafflewaffles made a video about the Tog der Toten Easter egg, and more importantly the cinematic cutscene where Sam and Eddie are walking through the tunnel. And he discussed, what if them walking through the tunnel is not only them walking towards this new life, but also walking through time? And that would make a ton of sense because Sam was born in the 1930s and Die Maschine takes place in 1984. That would mean that if she just stayed on her normal age trajectory, that Samantha would be nearly 50 years old. And she does not look like someone who's 50. She looks like late 20s, early 30s at best. So does that mean that when they were walking through that tunnel, they were passing through time and space from where they were previously in the forest? If that's the case, it's easy to assume that Samantha and Eddie came out of the tunnel somewhere around the late 1950s, maybe early 1960s. That way Samantha would have time to grow up, join Requiem, and then find herself where she is right now. And obviously she still has some recollection of what happened in the past, because during the opening cutscene, she says it's happening again. So she does have some idea of what happened in the past. Now, how does that tie in with Richtofen, you may ask? Well, you would think that Richtofen and Sam would have been hanging out together. You would think they would have stuck together after all they'd been through. But we see no mention of Richtofen. We don't find a cipher. We find absolutely nothing about Edward Richtofen in Die Maschine. So here's my theory. As we know from the opening cutscene, the Germans opened up and created the cyclotron back towards the end of World War II. Eventually it became too much for them and they fled, and the Russians came in, did the same thing, blah blah blah. They sealed it off because it was too much, and then the Omega group came in and messed everything up. Now there are anomalies opening up all around the world. So what if, instead of going with Samantha all the way to the 1950s or 60s, Eddie was like, I finally want my turn. And then he jumps out of the tunnel right around the 1920s, maybe the 1930s. That way he can grow up. He actually becomes a member of that German crew that built the cyclotron in the first place. Again, there's no mention of his name in there, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't there and that he might not have been a driving force. And especially if they do have some recollection of what happened to them in the past, who's to say that Eddie didn't want that again? After Richtofen got the summoning key out of Shadows of Evil, he went to a different dimension to capture the soul of an innocent Eddie and sent him to the house. That meant that him and that innocent soul that he captured were the only two Richtofens left, because he went around and killed all the other Richtofens. And then, at the end of Tog der Toten, when Nikolai killed Richtofen in the very, very end, that left the innocent Eddie as the one sole Richtofen left. But he still, of course, had bits and pieces of all the other Richtofens in his soul. They're all still technically him. So who's to say that he didn't want to go back and then join Germany in the 1940s and maybe access, now that he knows a little more, access something even darker than what he originally accessed back at the beginning of the zombie storyline. Now that he knew more about the Dark Ether, he may have been able to go back and access it and find a way with the cyclotron. Maybe he thought he could control it. We don't know. And it's an interesting theory. Is Richtofen again the bad guy in this story? Probably not. But it does have some interesting implications. So assuming that the tunnel is a timeline, the question may not be where is Eddie as when is Eddie. So it's abundantly possible that we could see, so we've seen zombie Richtofen, we've seen Eddie, we've seen regular Richtofen, we've seen Primus, we've seen Ultimus. Now it might be time to see old man Richtofen, because if he came out in the 1920s and they're in the 1980s, now he'd be like what, almost 70?
Mein God, mein back hurts. Scheiße. Maxus, get me the ibuprofen.
So this Richtofen is neither a member of Primus nor Ultimus. He is his own singular being. But at the end of the Origins Easter egg, when we watch Sam and Eddie playing in their room and Eddie didn't get his turn, well, maybe Eddie thinks this may be the way to get his turn finally. Another interesting theory that was going around the community when the opening cutscene to D Machine popped up was, if you look right here, there's a man walking past the phone booth while Sam is in it when she's talking to Weaver. Clearly, the man and Sam make eye contact, and she follows him as he walks along, and then we kind of don't see him again. But then, when Sam is leaving the phone booth, from the direction the man went, a car starts up, turns on its lights, and drives after Sam. Could this person have been Richtofen? It's incredibly possible. There are two different ways to look at it, if that's the case. Richtofen knows that Sam is his biggest adversary, and so maybe he wants to keep tabs on her. Maybe him and Sam are working together and they're telling Weaver these things, but they have their own ulterior motives. There's a lot of different ways to look at it if that was Richtofen, and by no means do we know for sure if that was Richtofen or not. There is no concrete evidence, but it is incredibly interesting to think about. One more interesting way to look at it is that if we go back through the storyline of Black Ops 3, the idea was for the members of Primus to go get innocent souls of each of themselves. We were at the Reisendrache and we received Dempsey's soul. We went to Zetsubo no Shima and got Takeo's soul. And then we went to Gorod Krovi and got the soul of Nikolai. And then we went to the house where all these souls were released to be protected, quote unquote. But in Black Ops 4, we learned that when they zip away during the end of the Zetsubo no Shima Easter egg to Alcatraz to get the blood, they're stuck. They can't make it back. And thus, that is where the timeline was fractured. Richtofen, realizing what had to actually be done, couldn't handle it anymore, and he gave the Chronorium to Nikolai. Nikolai knew what had to be done, but at this point, the souls of Takeo and Richtofen had already been captured inside of the summoning key. And then, at the end of the Tog der Toten Easter egg, Nikolai destroyed the summoning key. And he said, while he was doing this,
"When we are gone, so too is everything that spewed forth from the ether. Element 115, the Apothecars, even Monty himself, all of it will be banished to where it belongs. The Dark Ether."
all those things were inside of the summoning key. So there is reason to believe that when the summoning key was destroyed and all of that was sent back to the Dark Ether, that the soul of Richtofen, and at this point also Takeo, went with it. Well, I would say probably unlikely. When we are going back and forth into the Dark Ether in the next couple of maps, it's possible that we will see little callbacks to Richtofen here and there, because it's possible that he's in there. It's possible that he is in the Dark Ether, at least his soul. And after all the things that Sam and Eddie had been through, they have been inside of the ether. They've been inside the Dark Ether, even when they were children. So now, them being in this regular world, technically the Dark Ether should still be able to manifest through them. So it's possible that they are actually the cause of all this. Now, it's also possible that because of this, Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man are also still around somewhere in the Dark Ether. Maybe they take on the form of one of the Elder Gods. Who knows? Maybe their like combined souls or something like that became that Chernobog monster that we see after round 40. It's tough to say. But one thing that I can almost say for certain is that we will be seeing Edward Richtofen in Cold War Zombies in some way, shape, or form. I honestly find it strange that we haven't seen him already. That we haven't even seen a callback to him at this point. And another interesting thing to note is when Sam and Eddie were sent to the house for safekeeping, they were just souls, right? And then Monty manifested them bodies, but when he did so, they had American accents. And when they came back out of the house at the end of the Alpha Omega Easter egg, Sam went back to having a German accent. But we didn't hear anything out of Eddie, because no longer were they these perfect souls. We heard nothing out of Eddie, so it's possible that he also went back to a German accent, and he's also no longer this perfect innocent soul. After all they've seen, how could they be? Let me know what you guys think about these theories down in the comments below, and let's have a discussion about it. Do you have any other ideas as to how Richtofen could manifest inside of Cold War Zombies? Do you think we're going to see Richtofen? Let me know down in the comments, and then like and subscribe to the channel if you could, and if you are excited for more videos like this, more storyline videos, let me know as well by subscribing to the channel. But for now, guys, I hope this video made your day better. Here are a couple videos that I think will make your day even better, so feel free to click on either of those, and I will see you very soon.